Welcome to General Vezax. Okay, before we start, let's talk a little bit about positioning. We've got our raid split into three teams, left, middle and right. In the left and the right teams there are two healers, and the rest of the healers are congregated with the melee in the middle. This gives you two advantages really. First of all, your healers are spread out enough so that when teams are avoiding shadow crashes and marks of the faceless, that there's enough healing still to be applied to the rest of the raid. And it also means that you can concentrate the killing of your Saronite Vapors, which are more prevalent in the middle anyway, closer to your healing team, which is really the primary team that needs to have a mana return to them. Right, so what's next? Well, people are clumped up to make avoiding the crashes and the faceless a lot easier. And this fight's actually quite an easy fight, which is a bit surprising given the fact it's the penultimate boss in the instance. But it does completely depend upon player control and coordination, so if your guild suffers with that, then you're going to have an issue. So, boss abilities. Well, melee can really enjoy this fight because they haven't got to worry about it, and they have to deal with different things. But for ranged and for people that rely on mana to cause damage and to heal, etc., it's an interesting fight. First of all, the boss has got an ability called Shadow Crash. This fires a missile, which you'll see repeatedly through this fight, at a target that flies through the air and lands. Now, when it lands, it'll do 12,000 shadow damage, unless you're resisting some. And as soon as you find that one of the members of your team is targeted, you need to move. Now, the way we move is we split the movement between in, which is towards the boss, and out, which is away from the boss. At all times in Shadow Crash, just to make it easy, move in. Now, this was the first kill on this boss for us, so we're not exactly adhering to the rule at all times. However, just move in and that'll be fine. When the Shadow Crash hits the ground, it will do like an AoE explosion effect, and anybody caught in it will go flying, which is not great because it could knock you into other areas, which is going to increase damage done to other players, etc, etc. What it does do, of course, is leave on the floor a darkened area that when you stand on it increases the magical damage you do by 100%, your casting speed by 100%, although it reduces the healing done by 75%, it reduces mana costs by 70%. And he won't cast this on players within 15 yards of him. This means really that because you can't get any mana back from this fight, other than from Judgment of the Wise, Spiritual Attunement, Aspect of the Viper, and Thrill of the Hunt. Oh, and don't forget Shamanistic Rage. That's because of his Aura of Despair ability. You need to reduce the amount of mana that you lose per spell cast, and so really you're only going to be looking at doing damage when you're standing in one of the darkened areas as a result of a Shadow Crash. When you're not standing in a Shadow Crash, just wand. This will help also with Judgment of Light in getting health back if you've been hit, but don't forget that you need to bandage whenever your health is taking a hit and the CD on your bandage is gone. Next ability, Mark of the Faceless. It puts a debuff on a target that siphons 5,000 health per second from enemies near the target, but not the target itself, for 10 seconds. So, if it hits your team, the person who gets hit move out, everyone else move in. This is why it's always a good idea to get everybody moving in a single direction for both Shadow Crash and Mark of the Faceless, unless you're the target of Mark of the Faceless. It avoids a lot of confusion because the more siphoned health from players that there is, you get General Vezax being healed for 100,000 health per tick, maximum, obviously. Again, not cast on players within 15 yards of him, so you need to be very quick on your feet and move out of the way. If you're the target of this, you can ice block, you can bubble just to kill the buff instantly, which generally saves a lot of time and issues, especially for example if you have a Shadow Crash winging its way towards you at the same time. So not only have your players moved from their fixed position, but they're going to have to deal with the fact they need to move again in a direction that's not been predetermined because Shadow Crash is about to hit the floor close to where they are. Finally, with Mark of the Faceless, if you are the target, the debuff, make sure the debuff is worn off before you return to the team, otherwise you'll just carry on leeching them just like when you left. Next ability, Searing Flames. This attack does about 14 to 16,000 fire damage to all players within 100 yards, so basically that's your entire raid. What it also does is reduce the armor of these players by 75% for 10 seconds. Now you never want this effect to hit, and you need to have good interruptible rotation from melee on the boss at all times. You've only got 2 seconds to interrupt it, and so you need to make sure that not even a single one gets through, otherwise chances are it's going to be a raid wipe. The last ability of the boss is called Surge of Darkness. It's a self buff, increasing physical damage by 100% but reducing movement speed by 55% for 10 seconds. A lot of guides state that you should kite him around the room when this buff is up, but you'll see what we actually do is use a Death Knight tank with Icebound Fortitude, glyphed preferably, so reducing incoming damage by 30% plus more defense. And if you need to, just combine it with other damage reducing abilities such as pain suppression, etc. So long as the threat's okay anyway. And you can actually just keep him in place and heal through it. You'll notice our tank barely gets hit by it at all, in all fairness, and it only lasts 10 seconds. This is particularly useful if you're learning the fight and you want to keep players in a fixed position to avoid incoming damage from the Mark and Faceless and Shadow Crashers. Okay, so the final thing to talk about is the Saronite Vapors. You'll get up to 8 crystals spawned in the room that float around. If you don't kill any before you reach 8, that instigates hard mode, so don't do that. Not at this stage anyway. And when killed, they've each got about 25k damage. They create a green area on the floor that when stood in means you take damage but also get mana back. The amount of damage that you take is twice the amount of the mana returned and stacks up to, well, I think it's pretty much infinite. But we only recommend that you stand in it for 6 stacks, and 6 stacks will give you 3,200 mana, 6,400 damage. Make sure you're on full health before you go in. Don't go for 7 stacks because that's nearly 13,000 damage, and if you're trying to avoid things like Shadow Crashes at the same time, it leaves very little room for error, especially when learning, so just go in for 6 stacks. Once the 6 stacks has disappeared from your debuff line, feel free to go back in and get a little bit more mana where you can, but going into ice is far more easy for the healers to keep on top of the damage that's being created by the vapors, rather than you getting hit all in one go. So that's about it really, that's the whole fight. Good luck, there's a lot of things to kind of get in your head, but because you're in one position and just moving left or right and diving into a Saronite Vapor when one's close, it's fairly straightforward. Your team and your raid leader will control which team is to get the next Saronite Vapor down on the floor. Ideally you only want one down at any one time to reduce the amount of damage that you've got incoming to your team, and get some extra healers on the team that's currently in the Vapors. And there you go, so good luck.
Courses through me. I am unstoppable. Oh, what horrors await you?